All right, good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing today? It is Friday, 8/25, 2023. It is the first weekend of Season of the Witch, and we have the first Zur of that season. Let's go ahead and take a look. He's in the tower, as you can see here.
Yours. These are from the Nine.
Okay, so first things here with the exotics. We have Crimson this week. Crimson's pretty good, and Hand Cannon's just got a nice buff. I know the exotics got custom tuned, and to be honest, I don't remember offhand what Crimson's buffs were, but Hand Cannons are feeling really good right now. This season they had some big changes, so I would go ahead and pick this up if you don't have it and give it a shot. It also has some excellent ornaments if you like the fashion game on your guns. But yeah, go ahead and try Crimson out. It's very, very good, and we're actually looking like we're getting its predecessor, a pulse rifle version of it, next year with the final shape. But for now, this is a great hand cannon both for PvE and PvP. For armor, Graviton Forfeit. This is a good armor piece for hunters. It seems less play now than it used to. Omni Oculus has kind of eaten its lunch, but it definitely still has some big benefits, particularly if you're a solo hunter playing Void. As far as the role, 22 Resilience is great. Resilience is easily the most valuable stat in the game right now. 11 Mobility is also good. Typically you want as little mobility as possible for most classes, but actually Hunter does want mobility. Some people like running 100 mobility. Personally, I think that's overkill. I think even just 40 or 50 is usually fine, but in Crucible, people tend to want to push that even higher. So that's definitely a good stat to see on Hunters, though. And then 18 Discipline's also great. So if you're a Hunter, if you don't have a better Graviton Forfeit, I would go ahead and pick this up. This is a good roll this weekend. Oh boy. Okay, Titans. Synthoceps are an excellent, excellent exotic. They're boring, but they're excellent. The amount of extra damage you get when you're surrounded by enemies is very high. Very high. It's definitely worth picking up and using if you don't have a pair. That said, this might be the worst roll on Synthoceps I've ever seen. So it does happen to have strength on it, which is good, but it also has 15 intellect, which is a totally wasted stat. Intellect, as long as it's not below 30, you're probably fine. And mobility 24 is comical. It basically makes this roll immediate trash. The only reason I would say absolutely don't pick this up is that if you don't have Synthoceps at all and you play Titan, you definitely want one. So grab this if you don't have one at all. Otherwise, whatever roll you have is almost guaranteed to be better than this one. Last year we have Starfire Protocol. This used to be an all-star, and this was an all-star fairly recently, but it did get nerfed. It was kind of destroying boss metas, so it did get a big nerf now. It's less about boss damage, and it's more about kind of just flinging a bunch of grenades at ads, which is fine, but then it also kind of runs against Sunbracers, and frankly, I think Sunbraces do the job better, but hey, it's out there, and it did get an ornament. The ornament looks pretty nice. So if you like, if you don't have a Starfire Protocol, it might be worth picking up just to play around with it. But to be honest, the roll here is pretty middling. It does have a nice recovery spike, which is good for Warlocks, but 14's a lot of mobility on a Warlock exotic, and then 13 Discipline's not really enough to get me excited, particularly on a grenade-based exotic. You probably have a better Starfire Protocol roll, in which case obviously skip this one. But if you don't, I would say it's worth picking up to experiment with. But if you happen to miss it, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world if you don't pick this one up. As far as the weapons go, we have a lot of crafted weapons this week. So if you've got 5 harmonizers to slap down on something and you want to get one of these old guns, this might be a good week for you. So first one here we have is the Ikelos hand cannon. This is a 180 Void hand cannon. So 180 hand cannons have traditionally not been considered great, but they are pretty okay in PvE, and like I said, hand cannon just got a pretty big buff. So if you haven't played around with a 180, pull it out in PvE, see how it feels. You might end up liking them. The roll here is horrendous. I'm skeptical of Air Assault on the best of days. And on a PvE focused weapon, this is not where you want to be. Adaptive munitions is alright, but with the removal of match game, this became a lot less valuable. It still has a place in the game, but it's not something I'd want really in column 4 if I can avoid it, because that's where you're losing a damage perk. The magazine options and barrel options are okay. For a 180, those are perfectly fine. And a stability masterwork is nice. The 180s generally don't kick very much anyway, so it's going to be pretty level. That said, this is really not the role you want to have on this. I would only pick this up if you're buying some for crafting later. Geon 7, this is an older pulse rifle. It hasn't been, I don't think, entirely replaced. I'm trying to think. There is another 390 ARC pulse rifle. It's a Vanguard pulse rifle, so you can focus that. And I would argue that generally has better rolls. But you might just like the feel of this better, because obviously the stats are a bit different. As far as the roll on this goes, it's really not bad. Grave Robber and Rampage are both great perks in PvE, and the range masterwork here is going to give it some ability to reach out and touch things. It's got one of the longer range scopes, though I actually don't know if that's accurate anymore. They just changed how zoom interacts with range, so this has a long zoom on it. I don't know if it's still actually... Okay, it does impact the range a bit, so yeah, so that's still accurate. So it has a longer range scope, and it does have, like I said, a range masterwork, so this might be okay. Like I said, Geon's not really a favored pulse rifle right now. It's not really meta, but if you don't have one or you haven't played around with one in a while, this might be a good roll just to pick up and play around with. Death Adder. So this is a really old and frankly pretty power-crept SMG. Unless you want one just to like fill out your collections, frankly I would skip this, but let me talk through why. So the roll's actually fine. Corkscrew is perfectly fine, so is full bore. Steady rounds is probably where I would want to be on this SMG. And then DSR is great now, and rangefinder is not great, but it does extend aim assist cone out a bit, so that's still got some value to it. And a handling masterwork is fine. You'll be able to, ready and still the weapon faster. So it's okay. But here's the big problem. So this is a 900 RPM lightweight SMG. Look at the range stat. It has a range stat of 29. Now, I have a couple lightweights on me, so I want to compare this. Here is the one that just got re-released with the new season. You can focus it at the Season of the Witch table. The Showrunner, it's an older gun. It's just got brought back. This is a 900 lightweight SMG, and it has a range stat. Now, mine was masterwork to add 10, so it had a base range stat of 33, and is now up to 43. And frankly, it could be farther. I don't have a good range options on either my barrel or my magazine. That would be preferable, but the range here is already beating what we had before by a significant amount. But then let's look at probably the most loved 900 in the game right now, Funnel Web. Look at that range stat, 59. And this was what Death Adder was like wanting to be. It's still a Vice SMG, though it is pre-origin trait, so it doesn't have one. But just look at the huge stat changes. Like look at these stats, and again, I want to focus on that 59 range. And then we're gonna go back and look at Death Adder. 29 range. And frankly, most of the other stats are worse too. So if you're used to modern SMGs, newer SMGs, you're going to play around with this, and I can basically guarantee it's not going to feel very good. So, like I said, if you want it for just to have one in your collections tab, you're more than welcome to pick it up. But this has been pretty heavily power crept, and I would skip it unless you really want it. All right, next one here is Sweet Sorrow. This is an excellent auto rifle if you don't have one already. This is from all the way back in Season of the Risen, so the season that launched with Witch Queen. It was also one of the first craftable guns. So this roll's actually pretty good. This is pretty close to probably what you'd end up crafting on it. The only thing here you'd probably change is instead of tap the trigger, you'd probably have like one for all. So it does hurt this a bit that this roll doesn't have a damage perk on it. But between stats for all, accurized rounds, chambered compensator, a reload masterwork. This is going to feel really good when you're firing it. It's going to be really accurate, really stable. I don't think you're going to have any issues keeping it on target. And that land tank origin trait cannot be understated. If you don't have 100 resilience, it's going to feel really, really good. I would definitely pick this up just to have one if you don't have one crafted already. And if you don't have one crafted, frankly, I would suggest picking up a full 5 and strongly consider using your harmonizers on it. It is a very good auto rifle, and if you've never used it before, I would say just pick one up, see how it feels, and I have a feeling you're going to come back and buy the rest. Next here we have Tripwire Canary. This is a bow from Season of the Seraph. This is probably the best arc lightweight bow in the game, and I don't think that's particularly controversial. The only other real contender is Arsenic Bite, but that's a bit older, and there's better options to kind of replace that exactly, just in different elements. But anyway, this is an excellent roll on this. I like the string here. There's some other options you could go with for the actual shaft, but honestly, both of these are fine. And then Archer's Tempo Frenzy is an excellent combination. You're going to be able to fire really, really fast. Remember, reload speed on a bow is what the time it takes to knock a new arrow. So if you think about that, plus you have a draw time masterwork, and it's a lightweight anyway, you're going to be able to just machine gun out arrows really, really quickly. So I would definitely consider picking this up and playing around with it, especially if you don't have one at all. This is also one where I would suggest picking up a bunch of them and crafting it, because it really is worth having a crafted one. That said, if you don't have the harmonizers for that, if you've got other things you're planning to use them on, frankly, this roll, just as is top-notch. I would definitely pick this up if you don't. Okay, and next we have Tarantula. This is an older ARC LFR, but it's never been quite that good. So I'm going to talk through why this roll is not great, but there's a lot of better options just in general for this, and I would... Generally, seeing a Tarantula, it's very unlikely you're going to need one unless you are fairly new, in which case there's still probably better options, but this is going to be one of the easiest ones to get in that case. So it does have Arrowhead, and it does have accelerated or liquid coils, and a charge time masterwork. So far, we're doing good. Accelerated and liquid both have different uses, but they're both very viable, and charge time masterwork used to be kind of bad, but as of this season, it's probably goated now. Basically, it used to... fusion rifles used to have their damage per shot tied to their charge time, so if you lowered charge time, it would lower damage. But just this season, they finally broke that off, so now lowering charge time doesn't change your damage, which means lowering charge time is strictly a buff, and it's both unique to fusion rifles and probably their strongest trait, because more ammo downwind is always best. The problem here comes with Tarantula's third and fourth columns. Now, I want to be very clear. Tarantula doesn't really have good rolls on the best of days, but this is not it. Pulse Monitor and Wellspring, which needs kills, both do not make any sense on a gun where basically you're standing and putting ammo into a boss. Especially with Wellspring needing kills, you're generally not going to be using your heavy LFR to pick off, like, orange bars. It's going to be pretty much just bosses. So the number of kills you're going to get in an entire strike, for example, is probably going to be like 1 to 2 with your heavy LFR. So it doesn't make any sense to have a perk like that here. Generally, what you'd be looking for is something like Feeding Frenzy or like Field Prep. And then I think the best damage perk it has in column 4 is probably Box Breathing. So if you see one of those, go pick it up. If you see this one, unless you really need an ARC LFR, I would avoid this. And then finally, we have another ARC LFR, Sales by Pitch Glass, which is also, frankly, not great. ARC is just not a good element for linear fusion rifles. There's like one good one, and it's from the Duality Dungeon, it's Storm Chaser. But if doing the dungeon is not an option for you, you're going to probably have to grab one of these two. And of the two, this one's probably better because the perks aren't entirely useless, but it's also not great. So the barrel is fine. The magazines are fine. I would probably keep this on liquid coils. Compulsive Reloader is a little weird. You're not necessarily going to be reloading with a full mag because, again, on a boss, you're generally going to want to empty your gun, but there are situations this could be useful. Say you put a shot or two into a champion, and then as you're ducking behind cover, you can just quick reload it and it'll be a little bit faster. The weird perk here is multi-kill clip. I just said this on the other one, and it still holds true. Generally, you're not using your linear fusion rifle in your heavy slot to kill ads. You're going after bosses, so again, you're going to get very few kills with it. And that's actually kind of a feature of this gun. If you were around during Season of the Plunder, where this is from, and by the way, this is craftable, so if you really want one, you can go buy 5 and you can craft it. But the rolls on it were always kind of focused towards using it to kill large numbers of trash mobs as opposed to laying into a boss. In fact, its most popular role was Volt Shot, in which case Compulsive Reloader actually does make some sense. It does make sense here too with multi-kill clip, but it's just an odd linear fusion rifle. It's not really geared towards bosses. It's geared towards using it just to like pick off majors. That said, if you do want to craft it, I would recommend Volt Shot, which causes Jolt, over multi-kill clip, because the Jolt status effect actually makes other people deal more damage to something that's jolted. So you can almost use it like a debuff against certain bosses or champions you're trying to kill more quickly. Just something to think about. It's an interesting gun, and like I said, it is craftable, so if you want an arc linear fusion rifle that can do some interesting and unique things, picking up 5 of these isn't the worst idea, but personally, if I had 5 harmonizers to use and I didn't have any of these other guns, I would get them before this one. Alright, let's talk about armor here. So Titan armor, we have a bunch of mobility. I would pass on all of these. Titan does not want mobility. Titan, you basically want your mobility as low as you can get it, at least down to 30. Generally, you don't want to get a stat below 30 because that's actually where it starts penalizing you, but that 30 floor is exactly where you want mobility on a Titan. You really don't want to go any higher than that. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at Hunter. Okay, taking a look at the Hunter armor here. Oh, not the arms. Chest is okay. 63 roll, high resilience. I would like more mobility here on a Hunter, but this actually is fine. Class item has nothing. Helmets, okay. It's not terrible, though again, really low mobility is like an odd spot to be in for Hunter, but high strength, reasonable discipline, decent recovery, non-zero resilience, this is possibly worth picking up. These boots are actually pretty okay for a Hunter as well. Again, you got high resilience, the mobility exists, it has decent discipline and strength. Intellect's a little bit higher, I'd prefer to have that in mobility, but that is what it is. Again, worth picking up, and a 67 overall roll is pretty good there. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at Warlock. Okay, and here we are on Warlocks. Gloves are okay, honestly. You got high recovery, which is good for Warlocks, and then high discipline, which is also really where you want to be on Warlocks. It's got some strength there. Intellect is vacant, which is perfectly fine. I'd prefer that mobility be flipped with resilience, but frankly, these gloves are actually pretty okay. Not where I want to be on a robe. Too much mobility there. Class item. This is also pretty okay. It's not like I wouldn't drop everything to go grab it right now, but if you're looking for some high recovery armor in your head slot, this is not terrible. It's got a decent amount of discipline. Mobility's alright. Again, I wish that was flipped to resilience. The big thing here is I really wish the intellect was swapped with the strength. That said, for a Warlock, you've got a lot of DPS supers, or at least big damage supers, and having some intellect on you really isn't the worst idea. It's just not really that great of a stat anymore compared to probably some strength you want. But it doesn't hurt to have it somewhere on you, and frankly, a 67 roll helmet, this is pretty good. And then last thing here, we've got some boots, and this is basically the same situation, except they did in fact flip the mobility and resilience for me on this one. So same thing for these boots here. These are worth picking up if they work with your build. They're not perfect, but they're definitely worth looking at. And again, they're a 66 roll. This is pretty all right. All right, and let's take a look at our second page here. Okay, and whoa, totally forgot. So DMT is craftable now. It's actually in Presage. You can get it this week. The first run will get you a craftable one, and then after that, I think you can keep rerunning it this week to get all the masterwork options for it. But yeah, I totally forgot. That means it's no longer at Xur. So actually, the second page is really just for Hawkmoon. Bungie, it might be time to just extend this downward and get everything on one page. But anyway, let's take a look at the roll. Okay, so originally probably the God roll, Hawkmoon roll was rangefinder, and then maybe opening shot or moving target if you prefer those instead. But definitely rangefinder. Now though, with rangefinder having been changed, a lot of you are probably looking to swap away from that. And really, opening shot and moving target are great if you're not confident in your aim, but Hawkmoon already has almost perfect aim assistance, so really you don't need it. So a dueling perk like Killing Wind, or alternatively maybe Eye of the Storm, are actually going to be really good options here. And then for this one, the magazine is always the same, but Small Bore is a really good option here. You got more range and more stability, and then Smooth Grip is giving you more stability as well. I think this is a really solid Hawkmoon. If you're looking to replace the one you have, I would go ahead and pick this one up. Now, you're saying to yourself, wait, hold on now, maybe this is going to be craftable like DMT soon. It does come from an exotic mission, so it'll go on the rotator eventually, right? Yes and no. So it will go on the rotator eventually, most likely, but they actually said during the Bungie showcase, and it was easy to miss, so if you missed it, that's don't feel bad. But basically, they said that what's on the rotator now is all that's going to be on the rotator until at least sometime in 2024. So I would not be holding out for a craftable Hawkmoon until at least sometime into the final shape, and maybe not even at release. Maybe it'll be, later on during episode 1 or episode 2. So I wouldn't be holding out for a crafted Hawkmoon right now. I would just go ahead and pick up the best roll you can get every week. In this case, I think this is a great roll if you're looking to swap off of one you already have that maybe isn't as good anymore. Okay, and that's Xur for the week. Thanks everyone for stopping by. I do appreciate it. If you liked the video, please hit the thumbs up button, and also subscribe if you like the content. If you leave a comment, I will read it, I promise. And then, yeah, I'll be back every week with a Xur video if we can. Obviously, next weekend we have a raid coming out. I'm not going to be able to start the raid exactly on release, so I am going to have some time to get a Xur video out before the raid, so keep an eye out for that. I will try and get it out before I actually jump into the raid. But I think we're all killing, Crota next week, so we'll look forward to that. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. I do appreciate it again, and you all have a great weekend.